The Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have a blast. At the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey podcast. Today I've got Dawn Breslin with me, who is the founder of the Harmonizing wellness organisation. I think that's correct.
Yes, yeah.
And she's been on a very interesting journey to get to here and is about to do some more interesting things. So without further ado, let's begin. Welcome, Dawn.
Hi, lovely to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, Rebecca.
That's a pleasure. So tell me about the moment you decided to set up Harmonizing.
Well, Harmonizing is the third part on my kind of entrepreneurial journey. So I've had two other business incarnations before, and just before I set up Harmonizing, I lost a company. So I had an online business called Consciously Female, and when that business didn't work out, I was left burned out, exhausted, and really empty of energy and vision and purpose. And at that point, I actually didn't know if I was going to work again. So I took a few years out. I had no choice.
Right.
I had no energy. So I was adrenally fatigued and I couldn't work for 2.5, maybe even 3 years. But in that period, I started to ask the big question around how do human beings, how can they live more sustainably? How can they live with a sense of vitality, energy, and purpose when they're doing these full-on demanding jobs or running companies where we kind of run at things and we put all of ourselves into our work? How can we live more sustainably? And then I guess the bigger question, as I was adrenally fatigued, was, how do you recover from adrenal fatigue and start again? How do you do that? Because it's a really scary place to be when you have no energy. And if you have no energy, it's really difficult to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to create a vision. So this whole concept just kind of swum around in my consciousness for a few years. And I then started to look at models in nature of how things recovered after storms, how trees, plants, flowers, animals, what happens after we've been through chaos on a natural level? How does nature sustain itself? So I started to look at that, and I looked at the principles, and I started to question if we could actually learn from nature about how to live and how to grow and how to thrive, even, within chaos, throughout chaos. And very naturally, being a trainer and being a coach, I started to piece together some ideas, exercises, concepts, a philosophy for living. And when that started to really take form, I had my office, which I wasn't working in, was just covered with these big posters all over the wall with huge big writing and pictures of this emerging concept. And I knew that because I was learning from nature, it was that, things grow organically, they grow naturally. An oak tree takes a long time to grow. Mushrooms grow quickly and they die quickly. And it was this idea of how do we pace ourselves? So as well as establishing the concept, I was also living it. So I knew that I was going to be setting up a business, but there was no kind of hair pace within me that needed to drive now and beat everyone in the marketplace, to the finish line and make lots of money from this concept, because I'd really, from my previous experience, there was no way that I was going to work that way again. So that's how it was born. And so it was this emerging new kind of sense of purpose, sense of direction, and it was a very gentle, slow start.
How lovely and how refreshing to hear, to come back from such a low point and create something really rather wonderful. So who are your clients? Who do you work with now?
So I work over or in 3 different areas. The first part of my business was established working with coaches, so I created a system called Harmonizing, and the Harmonizing alignment process, and it's a life alignment process so that we can really harness our human system and manage ourselves into vitality, purpose, meaning, fulfillment, but at a paced, in a paced way. So I created the system, and that's now, I'm now running, I run an academy, and coaches, therapists, psychologists, all sorts of people come along and they train with me in the process so that they can work with clients who are burned out, who are suffering from low self-esteem, who are stressed, who are overwhelmed. So that's the first market. The second market, which is one that I'm working with some corporate lawyers at the minute, and what we're looking to do is, it's healing in the corporate world, so I'm creating wellbeing retreats for burned out, exhausted and overwhelmed executives and professionals, leaders who, are just really struggling to manage their home lives and their professional lives. So once again, we bring them in, we recalibrate their system, reprioritize their thinking, reevaluate their routines and their behaviours each day so that they can create a sustainable model, with strong boundaries, strong sense of self, strong sense of direction to go back into the workplace and thrive again. So we do that.
Wonderful.
And then the final thing that I do is I work with homeless people and people who are struggling with mental health issues, people who are unemployed. And I really feel like it's my contribution. I made a really big commitment. I kind of have this philosophy that, number one, I've got to look after myself. If I can't look after myself, I can't look after anyone, around me. Number two, after I look after myself, I really make sure my family are okay. So I have to create the time and the commitment to be there for my family. If I don't, I suffer from guilt. So it's really important to create that. And then number three is, I'm absolutely loaded with skills. I've been in this business for 25 years now. And I think in my community, there are people who are really suffering. And I am loaded with this information. So I felt it was really important for me to commit, half a day a week into my community where people could get access to my skills. So I've got a beautiful model for my wellbeing group. We run 12-week programs. And then once I've trained people, they become ambassadors for our next intake of people coming through. So that's a really deeply rich and rewarding project. And we're about to set up a charity around that as well. So yeah, those are everyone, whether I'm teaching coaches or I'm working in corporate or I'm working in the community, I guess ultimately it's healing and restoring energy, balance, motivation and power to the human system. That's Wonderful. What I'm doing across all those different fronts.
And I think everybody at some stage in their life needs something like that, a refresh, a recharge, setting the reset button, creating new, healthier habits that are, as you say, sustainable. Still allow you to function in life and work, but actually in a more managed and sustainable way.
And still have wealth and be really driven. And, the people that come to me, sometimes they're absolutely burned out and they're struggling to function. But a lot of the time, people are coming to me just because they're overwhelmed. And that's a societal norm now. So what we're doing is we're giving them well-being strategies and skills to help them, as you say, manage this human system to optimize their potential. And I think maybe, you know, our priorities need to change a bit. I think, you know, and there's people who will probably be listening to this podcast, and if your motivation is simply money, and if it's to get out there and make as much cash as you possibly can, you're going to have to put in an incredible amount of energy, and there will be a cost to that.
Yeah.
I think that if you grow organically, you grow naturally, you keep a life that is, you maintain a life that's balanced and rich and fulfilling, you know, you kind of get payback every day. Plus, you can grow into wealth. You know, my business has gone from a business that was just this tiny little seedling, and now, you know, we're starting to reap the rewards. It didn't happen in a year. It didn't happen in 2 years. But, you know, we've managed, and now we're at the tipping point where things are really going to accelerate. So it's not to the exclusion of wealth.
No.
You know,
no.
it's just living. And you know, most people that we talk to, they want more meaning. They want a deeper quality of life. But because we kind of live, or we've lived from the mind, I've written books on goal setting and how to achieve your dreams, you know, and we've been conditioned. And if we're into personal development and growth, you know, we've been conditioned to achieve, and we've been conditioned to focus on the material. But I think now we need to move quietly and gently into the heart space and start to look at what does fulfillment and a deeper experience of life really look like.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
So what's you talked about that period of time when you had adrenal fatigue, and not everybody will know what that is. I'm about to ask the question about the scariest moment. I'm guessing that having a business before and then finding yourself losing that and with no energy must have been quite,
absolute terror. I lived with terror for 2 years, and I had a very different mindset then. You know, at that point I was looking to become a millionaire. That was, everyone used to say to me, you know, I worked in television, I'd written books, I had a very public profile, I was speaking on stages all over the world, and I set up a .com. And it's not where my skill was. And so I moved from doing what was really natural to me, you know, working in the media, doing interviews like this, you know, educating people. That was my primary role and function, to working in tech where I was absolutely useless. But I am this eternal optimist, and I really believed that one day it was all going to change. And you know, so I had this optimism, but it was weighted with, you know, having really high overheads. At that point, you know, I had a very exciting lifestyle. I had sports cars, and, you know, I live in this lovely house, and, you know, yeah, my life was, you know, it was expensive. And I'd set up this business, and it wasn't making money, and it was at the time of the financial crash, so the banks weren't lending. So I was really each day just moving pennies from one bank account to another. And, you know, when you're setting up a business and you really start to get into it, it becomes like a child. It becomes like a baby. You'll know that.
Yeah.
It's your thing. And as human beings, you know, we're such conditioned creatures as well. You know, it's really difficult once you're on one track to change track.
It is.
And I was loaded also with the idea that I was, you know, I had this life purpose, and I was doing this for the greater good. And, you know, if I wasn't doing this, then what would I do? And my purpose would be lost. So I had all these really heavy weighted beliefs that were driving me to continue in the business. And then what happened in there was a whole series of personal things that were curveballs that were not anticipated. So, you know, I'm 3 months into a new business. My finances are going down. I've taken out my first credit card, and I own a property, quite a big property in the city centre in Edinburgh. And I got a statutory notice for £50,000 to pay this bill, and the banks weren't lending money. So because of the crash, the equity in my property, it didn't make sense for me to sell the property. So I had to hold on to that. So suddenly I had £50,000, and I'd made a deal with Edinburgh City Council to pay the money back over 5 years. So suddenly I had another mortgage,
Yeah.
thousands every month to pay back, on top of my existing overheads. And then I remember counting around 27 things happened, in our family. We had a huge issue in our family, which then created health issues for my stepdad, who then had a heart attack. My daughter had an acid attack on our car. And it was just like one thing after another. But I was holding on to this business. And actually, in retrospect, the business wasn't working. But I didn't let go.
No.
I was so committed. I was so in it. And it was painful, but it was my baby. And I just couldn't imagine. I'd become so fixed in my mindset that this was it for me, that I couldn't imagine doing anything else. So I just held on, and I held on in absolute terror. And a big part of my teaching now is about the idea that, it's like if you're made redundant from a job, or you get to the end of a relationship and someone lets you go, you never think you could survive.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's funny how life... I feel, I remember reading, there's a Gabby Bernstein book, and it's about, the title is The Universe Has Got Your Back. And I used to work with a lot of drug addicts and alcoholics who would go on to the AA program, and they would say, let go and let God. And I loved this idea of, God will save the day, or the universe has got your back. If you let it all go, you'll be fine. Well, sometimes you might not be fine in the initial stages. No. But what I've really learned is that, when you do let go, another path does unfold.
It's true.
And the retrospective view for me is that this was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow.
Because it recalibrated my whole system. It gave me a new mindset. You sent me the questions, and one of the other questions was about having what do I have sleepless nights over?
Yeah.
I don't have sleepless nights.
Wonderful.
And the reason I don't have sleepless nights is I used to. In that time, I had sleepless nights. I got by on wine after work at night to try and get out of the pain and the suffering, the numbness that my body was going through. But now I kind of trust that if something is really meant to be, if it's meant to work out, then things, especially if we're putting energy in its direction, it's going to come your way. And you know what? If it's not, and you're putting energy into something and it ain't sowing seeds and nothing's growing, then maybe it's time to just let it slide away. And by letting it slide away, something else will come through. And that, living with uncertainty, becoming comfortable with uncertainty, and trusting myself that I will get through no matter what. That's been the biggest. And also that sometimes the letting go can be part of a bigger plan, which I really believe on a spiritual level. I really believe that this was almost like a preordained path. It was like I was meant to go through this chaos. Because I'm now writing the book about harmonizing and how to recalibrate your system, how to live with these new mindsets so that we can experience more liberation, more freedom, more depth, more joy. An easier, more fulfilled way of being on this planet. Yeah.
It is, and I have to sort of show my hand and say I have experienced harmonizing for myself, and actually, for the listeners out there, the idea of me running a global coaching and training business came from going on the Harmonizing course with you, which I was frightened to go on because it was moving well out of my comfort zone. But I'm so glad I did, because you're right, it gave me that time and space to let go of perhaps old preconceptions about myself. And realise that was a good thing to let those things go, because you're absolutely right. When you let them go, new and often better
Amazing
ways
things.
of being and
Yeah.
living and come to the fore.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will be eternally grateful for that, Dawn. Thank you. And who inspires you? You started telling me before we press record. So who inspires
This
you?
was really difficult for me because, you know, I used to have a whole load of kind of gurus that people's work that I really, really respected and admired. And I'd watch someone take a singular idea, take it out into the marketplace, bang the drum about it, and a zillion followers would follow these beings. And it was like, oh my God, these people are so amazing. What they're saying is so amazing. I struggled to answer this. And when I came up with my answer, I came up with a local lady who runs a social enterprise in Edinburgh.
Oh.
Her name is, I'll give her a little name check. Her name is Danny Trudeau. She's a Canadian girl who runs an organisation called Tribe Porty. So basically it's a business incubation centre. She runs kind of budding entrepreneur programs for women, and she gets them on track with their business ideas and dreams. But what I love about Danny is she's created this sustainable business, a business model that I have never seen. She brought me into her program to work with the women because she didn't want entrepreneurs coming into their new businesses and just driving themselves into the ground. She really recognised that well-being, rich daily routines to nurture and care for ourselves. She recognised that not putting full pressure onto ourselves and recognising, the importance of, like the seasons, our changing phases of energy, especially for women going through changing phases of energy on a monthly basis through the monthly cycle, was to be recognised. She also recognised the different phases of growing businesses, and the business starts off in a winter phase where, you might be incubating an idea, and then it moves into a spring phase. And when we start to recognise these phases of growth, then we can relax more into our business, and again we can enjoy it. So she brought me in to teach these phases and to teach this new way of thinking and being. Inside the business as well, she's so interested in sustainability in general. So the way she's built this really funky centre, the way she runs her community, the support, the nurturing, the education that she offers in this business centre is incredible, and it's so holistic. Well-being's a huge part of what she's doing. So when I look at Danny, I kind of see someone who is really getting the balance of living and the balance of business right. And I don't see a lot of that in the world. I don't, so in a lot of ways she's embodying a lot of the stuff that I really believe in and the stuff that I'm teaching. Whereas I see an awful lot of people just, driving forward and not really paying attention to the deeper aspects of life. So yeah, Danny Trudeau. She's like, high five, Danny.
You have to introduce me to her.
She's amazing.
Yeah,
yes,
you will.
I will.
Okay. And what do you really hate about running your business, Dawn?
Well, the part tech, tech, and paperwork and being behind a desk is difficult for me. But again, when I read that question, I thought, I can't say I hate it now because I have a team who do so much of this stuff for me, and that's been a wonderful experience. Growing a team of people who are aligned with the Harmonizing vision, and we run the business in a different way. We do little training sessions together that are personal development, personal growth, and I don't drive them really, really hard. There's a really relaxed vibe in the business, but my God, they support me, and they get things done for me. So the part that is always has been the difficult part is being done for me. So yeah, I don't like that part, but it's being done.
Great.
So I can't say I hate it.
I'm
Yeah.
huge fan of delegating the stuff that you don't like.
Yes.
Because you don't like it, you're not very good at it. You don't do it properly.
Yeah.
So just delegate it. And some entrepreneurs will be sitting there going, well, yeah, but I can't afford it.
Well, I have to say, this is where my prioritization might be different from other people, because I would much rather delegate and pay someone than chase the profit every time.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to have less for myself, and especially in the initial stages, have less for myself, but get the stuff that's really like drudge, get that out of the way. So yeah, I cut the profit for myself and I'll pay for a team instead. And one day, or we're there now, it will, things turn around and the profit comes.
It does.
And then I'm not left despairing with running my business. I think because it's exhausting.
It is.
Doing stuff that you're not good at.
It is exhausting.
It is.
And that's really interesting that, again, business owners will sit there and go, well, I don't want to cut profit. But actually, I think doing that in the early stages means that you get to more profit faster.
I agree completely.
And with more sanity.
Yes, yeah. And not having to go through these initial stages, because you can start to hate your business.
Yeah.
Getting up in the morning and doing stuff that you really don't want to do is horrible.
Yeah.
And then you can resent it. Whereas this has kept me fresh. So, for the first few years, there wasn't a lot of money around at all. But I was up for that.
Yeah.
I was up for that. So that's a decision.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's personal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is very personal, definitely. And these two questions are sort of fairly well linked. What do you love about running your business, and what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that gets me out of bed in the morning, we'll start with that, is I've developed this incredible connection with nature. So it's not actually a mindset about the business. It starts off with my foundation for living. And, if you look at my Facebook page, my Instagram pages, all you'll see is sunsets and sunrises, and you'll see dusk, because these are my two absolute favourite times of the day, and I'm really blessed. I live right on the beach, and I live also very close to some just gorgeous woodlands. So I'll find myself in these places at the very beginning of the day, or the end. When I say the end of the day, I'm talking about the end of sunlight. And at the end of the day, to rejuvenate and to kind of recalibrate after I've been working. At the beginning of the day, it's setting me up with a daily routine and bringing awe and wonder into my life, and the sunset, the sky, the birds, the seals, whatever it is that's around here. When I am exposed to that at the beginning of the day, it's almost like I've got a day to myself before I even start work, and to be around at dawn is trickier in the summer when it's 5:30 in the morning, but at 8 o'clock at the minute in the winter. It really, so again, it's the self-connection is what begins the day for me. And then going into the day, running the business, there's two big motivators for me in business. The big one is, how can I help and how can I educate as many possible people on this planet in these new techniques, and this year I'll be writing my new book, I'll be doing TED Talks, I'll be moving back out into the media to talk about, what I'm doing. And I love all of that. It's kind of, I'm a saleswoman for the soul, that's what I do. I go out.
I love that.
So on one level, that's what I'm doing. The other thing that I just love about business is creativity. So we're just about to rebrand the business. We have to constantly, and in business it's like this. You set up your business, you think, this is my idea, this is my tagline, this is what we're about. And then a few years or a year later, you're kind of thinking, the marketplace is changing, and actually I understand my brand even more now. So we need to refresh. So I love the creativity of branding. And I love the creativity of, for me, specifically, you know, being able to educate in so many different ways. So I run a training school, I might work in an entrepreneur school, I work in a homeless shelter when I'm doing my training with homeless people. I might be working with the BBC, you know, and doing media work with them. I might even create a TV show all around these messages that I've, you know, nurtured and grown and, you know, just that I've brought to life over 4 or 5 years. So it's the length and the breadth of creativity that I can have in sharing. And that keeps me alive because I get bored, you know. So if I can't find new ways to do things, it's kind of like, okay, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
So at the minute, it's about taking my concept and taking it out in as many new ways as possible. So refreshing inside the business and keeping the team fresh and alive as well. You know, really not just seeing them as working in the company, but you know, we do personal development. We make it a living, breathing embodiment of harmonizing, and then you know, working together to create quite a funky brand.
Wonderful.
Funky's maybe not our term actually. A lovely brand.
It is a lovely brand.
Yeah.
It is, and I know brand is very important. It's essential to grow a business and get a message out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's about sharing that know-how and that expertise
and getting that right, you know, and getting the messaging right. And one of the big things as well is, you know, which I've found really challenging, is meeting the marketplace when you have a new concept. So trying to translate into a language where you understand something, but they don't know it yet.
Yeah.
That's been challenging.
Yeah, very.
But it, you know, I probably, when I look back on 25 years of being in business, I actually think sometimes the journey and the challenge is as exciting as the wins.
Oh, totally.
You know, it's like the actual, you know, trying to put the business, the jigsaw puzzle together. It's like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
I find that maybe that's been a coach as well. It's trying to work out what's the problem, how do we get round this? The problem solving part of it's fun.
It is. I mean, that's the bit I love, which is why I work with businesses to solve their problems. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Okay, good. So if your business was a person, what kind of personality would it have?
I think you would have the personality. It would have a strong spiritual core. It would be very grounded. And then there's this dynamic side, you know, because as much as the spiritual and the grounding is there, you know, that's kind of the roots going into the ground. There's also the energy and the empowerment and the liveliness and the aliveness that this awakens in people. So there's the spreading of the branches. So there's that dynamic, sparkly vitality. Vital. So spiritual, grounded and vital, I would say.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. That is wonderful. Dawn, it's always a joy and a pleasure to speak with you and to spend time with you. Actually, I have to confess, we're in Dawn's kitchen.
We are, and it's lovely.
Because I couldn't resist coming out to meet her to do the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank
and
you,
where
Rebecca.
can people find you?
Okay, so you can find me at either harmonizing.com, and that's harmonizing with a Z.
Okay.
Or if you put in donbreslin.com, my name, you'll be redirected. I'm on Facebook, and really I'm most active on Facebook. There's my personal page, and then there's the Harmonizing by Dawn Breslin page on there as well. And I'm on Instagram, so if you want the more intimate stories of how I'm making my way through this life and this journey, then you can find me on Instagram.
Wonderful.
Dawn Breslin.
Wonderful, and I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your time
Thank you
today.
for having me, Rebecca. It's great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have